right, welcome back to the second ever recording of the Pregame Sports Podcast. We actually had a decent amount of views for the first week. I think it was like 110 views on YouTube and getting some serious likes on our Facebook page and our Twitter page. Please remember to follow us. Pregame with us is the Twitter handle. I'm Kevin Towle alongside Spencer Pearlman. And calling us in today, we have Abdul, Dullo, Koroma, and of course, Joshua, the Mayor, Tambor. Guys, welcome back.
What's up, boys?
How's it going?
Thank you. I would just like to note that my re-election campaign for 2016 has been officially announced today, so I will be running for my fourth consecutive term as mayor.
Well, we wish you the best of luck in your endeavors. Let's talk about the sports week. I mean, we have a lot to talk about today. First off, I personally think that the world is better off without the Dallas Cowboys in the NFC title game. I think we could all agree on that.
But they're America's team.
You know what? I don't buy that anymore. I think the world's better off without the Dallas Cowboys in the playoffs. I can't believe, quite frankly, that the Ohio State University won the national championship. We'll touch on that a little bit. And, of course, our Knickerbockers lost again. They couldn't change things up in England there. They couldn't get the job done in London. I don't know what happened. Maybe it was the jet lag. Who knows?
Spencer, as you pointed out, I don't know which is worse.
Yeah.
Starting the game being down 14-0, or at one point being down 38-15.
Like on the bright side, they finally scored. They scored, but they also ended up being doubled up for the first 35 minutes of the game.
Regardless, it was another ugly loss, but it seems like there's a trade going on every day in the NBA. We'll touch on that a little bit. And finally, to close it off, talk college hoops, our University of Miami Hurricanes ended the Duke Blue Devils' 41-game home winning streak with a great victory in Durham, North Carolina the other night. We'll touch on that. The weekend games coming up. We got a lot of sports, so stay with us. Well, we certainly have a ton to talk about with the NFL playoffs, a quick recap of last weekend's game, and of course the fiasco that is NFL head coaching changes and even some coordinator changes. I want to start, guys, with a brief recap of the divisional games last week. I mean, much can be said, much more entertaining than the wild card weekend, I must say. And what comes to everybody's mind is, was it a catch or was it not a catch? Josh, what's the ruling on that play?
I ain't never seen anything like it. That's what Des Bryant said. And even Mike Pereira, the Fox expert in this, ruled it not a catch. I'm inclined to stick with him. Look, all over the sports world, the secure saying, oh, well, the rule has to change. The guy was trying to extend for the pylon. He wasn't extending for the pylon, period. Listen, I understand that we are all Giants fans here, but no catch is no catch. You have to maintain possession all the way through. The ball hit the ground, he didn't cradle it, and he wasn't extending for the pylon. And at the end of that game, the Cowboys did have a lead in that game. The Cowboys let that game slip away from them, and Aaron Rodgers also showed us why he's the best quarterback in all of football.
Spence, was this the right call and just a bad rule? What do you think the NFL will look at this and say, you know what, we have to change this up?
Okay, so I do think it was the right call, and the same call was actually made back in 2010, like to bring you back to the Detroit Lions against the Chicago Bears. Lions are down, 25 seconds left. Throw the ball to Calvin Johnson. Same thing. He catches the ball, it comes down, the ball hits the floor, it pops out. Was ruled a touchdown, then they changed it. Same exact thing happened here, only like with greater consequences. Now, can they change the rule in the future? Sure, why not? But the fact is, at the time of the game, the rule was the rule, and it seems like they made the right call.
You know what? All I have to say is, Cowboy fans, karma is a real bitch because you shouldn't even been there in the first place. Abdul, I want to talk about what Belichick did against the Ravens. I don't even think anybody caught it, to be quite frank. He was messing with everyone's head, including John Harbaugh, with the ineligible versus eligible receivers. Did you have any idea that was going on?
See, this is the thing that I merely think when people are making a big deal about Belichick, playing some tricks. The ref announced that receiver is ineligible downfield. So it's really on the Ravens the Raven defenders for not taking that into account and just not covering the guy. C.J. Mosley on some plays, you'd see him be 20 yards back, covering the line, and whoever was subbed in, I think it was a wideout or the backup tight end was subbed in as the right tackle. It's just, what are you doing? Just listen to the refs. So I think that the Ravens are making a big deal about it, but if they just sat back for a second, thought about it, called the timeout, regrouped over what they were doing, then everything would have been taken care of, and they would have learned to not cover the guy. That's on the Ravens. I don't think the Patriots really. I don't think that was a big deal. What that they're making it to be. That's on the Ravens. That's a big bad minds on the Ravens for me.
You know what? Joe Flacco kills me. Joe Flacco kills me. He almost had it. He almost got the job done, but he could not seal the deal in the end. Tambor, what's going on with Peyton Manning, man? I mean, is he done? Is his career over?
So before I get to Peyton Manning, look, the Ravens had a chance to win that game, and by the way, they let the Patriots go and score in the second half. And on the fourth down call, I have no clue what the Ravens are doing calling a deep run on that ball. All I need to do is go get yards. And the same thing happened in the Dallas game, just before I get to that. It was 4-2 in the Cowboys game. We saw reckless play calling that attributed to losses. As for Peyton Manning, it's time to wave him goodbye.
No.
It is time for him to retire, and I will tell you why this is. One, I think Peyton loves playing for John Fox. We'll get to John Fox and where he's going to wind up, I'm sure, in a second. I will guarantee that Adam Gates, his offensive coordinator, is no longer. I will guarantee that there is a massive change at the staff. They will not have a lot of the same weapons. I guarantee either one of the Thomases, Julius Ford, Demarius will leave. I think Peyton's body is a lot more beat up than we think it is. Yes, he's a tremendous competitor, and he's a guy who takes great care of himself, and he's a guy who values himself playing the game. But I think Peyton will be in the same way that Mariano Rivera once famously said, I'll know when I'm done when I can't get the job done anymore. Well, eventually figured it out at 43, and maybe he pitched the season too long.
Abdul, why is he not done?
I'm going to throw out three numbers. 4,727 yards, 66% completion rate, 39 touchdowns. If that's done, then there shouldn't be any starting quarterbacks in the NFL, really.
And keep in mind that
but that's also, remember, that's with a torn right quadricep, and that's your push-off leg. So I think a lot of people forget that at the end of the day, when we're talking about his weapons, the Broncos are right up against that cap. Like you were saying, they'll probably lose 2 out of his 3 weapons. So let's say Julius Thomas, let's say he gets franchised, and they keep one of the wideouts. The Broncos are good at finding offensive weapons in the 3rd, 4th round of the draft in that spread-out system that isn't really that complex when it comes down to route running. And it's not they have C.J. Anderson. So a newfound running game, I don't really think that this offense is going to drop off that much. I mean, we talk about Julius Thomas like he is this otherworldly tight end. Was he really that highly rated coming out? Is he really that explosive?
Well, he was a basketball player, right? He was a basketball player. He's like Jimmy Graham.
I think the main thing about Julius Thomas, it's a big body. He doesn't scream sideways, side-to-side explosion to me. He's not. I wouldn't say he's like a top-tier athlete. I think a lot of that is Peyton Manning making his receivers. So I don't think, and with the loss of John Fox, remember John Fox is a defensive coach. So a lot of these offenses are based completely off Manning, and Manning having free reign. He's basically the offensive coordinator of the whole offense, basically. So I think that honestly, when you'll notice a quarterback. This is the telltale sign for a quarterback going down his completion rating. So I think that him being up there at 66%, he was up at 69% through 10 games. I still think he's got 1 or 2 good years left. I really don't. And you only have 1 year left. I think it's a $15 million cap hit next year. Take the last year. Take one more run at it. Your contract's up. Go from there. There's no point to cut it short when you can obviously still play.
No, that's definitely a good point. I mean, Who knows? He should know probably within the next month. He's going to talk to Elway. We'll see if anything happens with that. Spence, you had some thoughts on Manning?
No, I was gonna say pretty much everything that Abdul said. Like the completion percentage, everything. Like he had a fantastic statistical year, and like you said, it was playing on the torn, was it right quadricep?
Yep.
Like that push off, like everything. That's just hard to do. And you figure next year they're gonna come back. Hopefully he'll be fully healthy. Bring back most of the receivers. C.J. Anderson's gonna be in year 2 after what he did.
That's scary.
I know, and he
Think about that. Year 2, huh?
He carried my fantasy team, so I'm a big fan of his. But
You had a hell of a run at the end there. That's true.
yeah,
I think like we're really having an overreaction. We always do this. It's like Mariota losing that game on Monday night. All of a sudden, oh my God, he's not the number 1 pick. Like it's the overreact. It's the overreaction. So I think with Manning, it's the same thing. We have to take a step back, look at his body of work over this year, and see. It's only since really that Week 14 game versus San Diego where it started going downhill. But you can attribute that to the injury.
No, that's absolutely right.
So I can attribute part of it to an injury. I can attribute a lot of it to the age. Look, I agree with every one of you guys that his completion percentage is so high. But I think for Peyton, the biggest driver that we're going to end up seeing is his body is very beat up. Remember, he had the back surgery and the spinal surgery, which some people were calling a near career-ending issue, and obviously, thankfully, he came back and he's put on the tremendous seasons that he's had. But I think now with the torn right quadricep, the general bodily injuries that occur, he's 38 years old. I'm sure his back is going to have to get reassessed. To me, I actually think the only way he comes back is if he has enough of an input in the coaching decision. Now, I know he said, I'm not going to have all this input in the coaching decision, and John Elway has made it. But to me, it only makes sense for him to come back if he sees guys like Mike Shanahan, the guy who's, by the way, been in Denver, and he's a running back whisperer, and he's, by the way, a winner in Denver. If Mike Shanahan comes back, I see Peyton staying. I think if they go with somebody else, I think you could very likely see Peyton hang it up. Even though that he's at 100% level of play, but either the circumstances aren't right or his bodily health is not right.
Well, I can tell you this. If he does come back, he has to worry about one team, even if they're not in the AFC, and that's Seattle Seahawks. And before we go into breaking down the AFC and NFC title games, I want to say one thing. I personally think, now, I'm only 23 years old, but when you look back in NFL history, you have the late 70s Vikings. You have the 85 Bears, the sack exchange with the Jets. You have the 1990 New York Football Giants defense led by Lawrence Taylor. Dominant defenses, okay? Those were all led by the defensive line and the linebacking core. When have you ever seen the best defense, arguably ever, led by the secondary? And that's exactly what you have with the Seattle Seahawks. They took care of business against Cam Newton. They made him scared. Cam Chancellor, Earl Thomas, Richard Sherman. Those guys are dominating in a league where we've seen a big transition. We have seen a big transition to a more pass-heavy offense in the NFL. So I must say, I'm impressed with the Seahawks. But why should we talk about the past when we really care about is what's coming up this weekend? Now, I don't think you could really write up a better weekend matchup for both the NFC and AFC title games. Let's break it down here. The first game on Sunday at 3:05, Fox has the call. The Green Bay Packers take on the 12th man and the Seattle Seahawks. Vegas likes the Seahawks by 7. The big question is Rodgers, is he going to discount double check and be healthy for Sunday's game? He was at 60% at best, against the boys and still got the W. Spence, who do you like, and is Rodgers going to get the job down the road?
I think Seattle's going to win. They're my Super Bowl picks. I think they're going to win it all. I do think that the not extra week, I guess, 6 days or so off for Aaron is going to help him. And what I actually really like about the Seattle defense is that when you hear all the interviews, everyone's asking them about how you're going to deal with Rodgers. He's mostly a pocket quarterback now. They keep saying that they watched the game last week and they saw him moving around and he was doing his thing. So they're not underestimating him. In fact, it seems like after last week they should kind of be worried.
Spence, do you think they win? Do you think they cover the spread? Do you think Seattle wins by 7, or is it closer?
I do think they covered the spread. I think maybe it'll be 10 points. Go with 10.
Interesting. All right, Tambor, I know you've always liked Aaron Rodgers, but you think he can get the job done and win on the road? That's a tough place to play, man.
I would love him to do it. I unfortunately, realistically, don't think he's going to do it. And it's not necessarily going to be the defense that's going to do it. So I'll take Seattle to cover the spread to get that out of the way. I think what we're going to see, the bigger problem is going to be on the offensive side for Seattle, and it's going to be the big explosive plays. They have become very good at that. And it was not like Carolina wasn't on the field. They actually outpossessed them, I believe, from a time of possession. It was the big explosive plays, and I think you could see Russell Wilson's legs play much more of a role in this game and look for an over-aggressive defense in Green Bay to possibly get beat on some of those zone replays.
Interesting. Abdul, I know you've always liked that aggressive Seattle defense. You think they'll continue the momentum and take it to the Super Bowl?
See, Seattle's defense, the reason why, back to what you were saying about how great this defense is, how vicious it is because they run cover 3. And they run mainly out of cover 3 with chance of being able to play up that line of scrimmage. And I think that then being able to put 8 in the box pretty much 85% of the time is going to hinder Lacey. And I think Lacey's a big, big key on Sunday. I
agree. I absolutely agree with you.
Because I feel like Rodgers doesn't throw picks. I think he's when his touchdown, the interception, and Rachel was
he doesn't turn the ball over that much. I don't know the numbers,
yeah,
but it's impressive.
But the thing is here, this defense right now is hot. They're turning it over. They're getting takeaways, especially Cam Chancellor. I think Cam Chancellor is actually playing better than Earl Thomas this year. Earl Thomas is probably best safety in the NFL, best cover safety, but Chancellor's putting it all together. I mean, just with that 90-yard pick last week, that showed it off. But
he was a monster.
Frankly, I think at the end of the day, what's going to happen is that Seattle are going to put, especially Rodgers, as you said, that can't move that well this week. Okay, he's up to maybe about 80%. But Michael Bennett and that line are going to put pressure. I think they're going to shut down Lacey because we've seen Lacey, especially at the beginning of this year, get completely shut down. Even in that first game for Seattle, they got destroyed. Green Bay got completely wrecked.
Week 1, that's right. They were in Seattle. That's absolutely right.
Completely wrecked. So I think, really, at the end of the day here, I think that the Packers will put up a fight. It's a championship game. No one's going to go down, just lie down. I think at the end of the day, Seattle's going to create a turnover, going to create multiple turnovers, and limit that Green Bay offense from being able to bounce it out and being able to run the ball, which is big when you're away from home, especially in a vicious environment like Seattle.
I happen to agree with all you guys.
Seattle are going to pull away at the end of the day.
Happen to agree with all you. I like them to win. I also like them with the points, -7. The one thing I will say is seeing Cam Chancellor jump over both the defensive and offensive line against the Carolina Panthers during that last-second field goal at the end of the first half there just made me realize that this guy can get in anyone's head, and they are a vicious, vicious defense. Now, the nightcap, or early evening cap, rather, Indianapolis Colts and my boy Andrew Luck go to Foxborough and take on the New England Patriots. That's Sunday at 6:40. CBS has the call. Vegas likes the Patriots -6.5. I'll start it off here. I went with them last week in the upset over Denver. I'm sticking with my pick. I like the Colts in the upset win. I think it's time to transition from the greats of Tom Brady and Peyton Manning to the next generation, the Russell Wilsons, in this case, Andrew Luck. And you have to give that Colts defense a little bit more credit. They were impressive last weekend. I may be a contrarian here, but I like the Colts. Tambor, I know you've always loved, even when he was at Stanford, you love Luck. Will he take the Colts back to the Super Bowl?
It is his time to shine. And nothing would make me happier than watching Tom Brady lose again.
Again?
No, in all
The
seriousness.
key word being again there.
In all seriousness, I am taking the Colts here, and I think it's for exactly that reason. But my contingency is you cannot leave points on the field in Foxborough. You cannot throw picks like that. And I think, again, the key to the game, similar to how he was at the end of last week's game, Dan Herron. He's been great for them, both receiving, and he was excellent running the football in the last two games. I think if he can get involved in the offense, similar to how Kevin Falk was in the olden days for the Patriots, you will see Andrew Luck going to his first Super Bowl in Super Bowl 49.
I like the call, Tambor. I like the call, Spence. Does Brady keep it going? They rarely lose at home in Foxborough. Does he take the Pats to the Super Bowl?
So I'm kind of worried about picking the Colts just because the last time, picking
It's a shellacking. They got shellacked.
well, that's not why.
last
I'm
time.
worried that if I pick the Colts, they'll end up losing. But I do think that they will end up winning. You look at Luck's stats from the last game they played: more than 300 yards. He had 2 touchdowns. He had a pick. And then on the flip side, you had Jonas Gray in his first week as an NFL starter, or maybe second week, rushed for 200 yards. Like, what are the chances that's going to happen again? I think, after the way the Colts defense played last week, I think they're on the upswing, and I do think they're going to win.
Abdul, talk to me. Who do you like?
See, I don't know why a lot of people talk about this Colts defense like it was the old Manning Colts defenses that were undersized.
Oh, they look good, though. They look good.
This defense has a lot of talent. I mean, we have DeQuell Jackson, a Browns cast off, but before he got injured 4 years ago, was a top middle linebacker. Vontae Davis is a top 3 cornerback in this league. He's a monster. He's an absolute shutdown corner. And you have other people like Jordan Warner, a great rusher, Eric Walden. See, at the end of the day, what I think with regards to the Ravens showed last week is that this Patriots offense can sputter. Because outside of Gronk, I know Edelman, they don't break open that trick play last week with that long Edelman pass. I think that's a completely different game.
Absolutely.
That one play touchdown really changed that game. So I feel like it's Luck. The big thing here that I feel is going to harm them more is Luck taking that dumb throw, that dumb shot, which is triple coverage, and him being like, you know what, I can make it. He has to limit that this week. Because as Pam was saying, you cannot leave points on the field in Foxborough.
No, absolutely.
They've got to play smart. They've got to play smart football, take care of the ball, and be able to take your chances. And that defense being able to try and keep that Brady under control, which I think you can do. I think you really can. That offense didn't really impress me that much at certain times last week.
No, you're right. Those are all fair points. It seems like the consensus from the pregame podcast is a Seattle Seahawks and Indianapolis Colts Super Bowl in Arizona on February 1st. So before we end,
we're New York radio.
Oh yeah, you got that right. Before we end the NFL segment, I just want to talk about the coaching carousel mess that is the NFL right now. I mean, the list goes on and on. John Fox out in Denver. Jason Garrett gets a 5-year extension. Rex Ryan goes to Buffalo and stays in the division. Todd Bowles to the Jets. Del Rio to Oakland. San Francisco decided to stay within house and hire Jim Tomsola as the D-line coach. That was a little weird in my opinion. And of course, we couldn't leave out our boy Steve Spagnuolo coming back. I guess we'll start there because we're all Giant fans. I love the move. I'm glad they did it.
This is the best thing they've done all week since hiring Walton, who was the defensive backs coach under Jim Schwartz. Remember, Spagnuolo has that aggressive style of defense, and he's going to be great for guys like John Beeson when Beeson gets healthy, when Antrell Roll, who I believe will now come back. Even if they decide to keep Jason Pierre-Paul, which Giants fans all openly know, I have never liked him, and I always have beat on him. He will get them to play aggressive. He will get them to play fast. He will get them in situations where they can blitz and start rushing the quarterback, which we have desperately pleaded for here in New York since that last Super Bowl win. I love this move.
I definitely think it's a great move. Two coaching vacancies still available. The Chicago Bears and the Atlanta Falcons. Looking like Dan Quinn is going to get the Atlanta job, assuming they don't give it to anybody else, obviously. The one guy who's the loser here is Doug Marrone, who thought he was a lock for the Jet job, and, well, he's still unemployed. But, needless to say, I'm sure we'll have a lot more to talk about that coming up in the coming weeks. And now we got to talk college football. Well, we saw the NFL guys, the pros, play on Sunday. But on Monday night, I think the Ohio State Buckeyes shocked the world in that upset win over the Quack Attack Oregon Ducks. There's a lot to take from that game. Abdul, did Marcus Mariota did he hurt his future draft status? And can you break down his performance from that game for me?
I don't think he hurt his future draft status in the views of NFL GMs. I'm sure ESPN is going to go on and on about how he didn't win. But I think that the only thing that a lot of NFL GMs I already believed, thought Winston was the better pick over him already. I think that the media outlets are now, it's sort of validation for them since he lost. They're like, oh, okay, he lost. He didn't play exactly well. Winston's the one pick. But I think if you watched a lot of Mariota's throws last week, his mechanics can get really off at some points. I feel in a lot of time, if you can push him out of the pocket, and if you can push out, especially rolling to his left, he'll do a lot of throws that just will get picked off in the NFL.
No, you're absolutely right. You got that right.
Especially, it's sort of like a situation in which he's also coming from a spread system. I mean, that I feel is really going to hurt his ability to be able to learn a pro style fast enough, because you can't sit a quarterback for 2 years anymore.
No, you're absolutely right.
Is he worth a top 6 pick? To me, if you have to sit him for 2 years because you have to learn the system, I don't know about that. But I feel if some team will fall in love with that 6'4", 220-pound frame who runs a 4.4, we'll draft him top 6, and we'll go from there.
Tambor, wanted to ask your opinion on this. Ezekiel Elliott, I mean, we knew he was good. I don't think we thought he was going to have that performance on Monday night. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts on Ezekiel Elliott, and even though Cardale Jones is staying in school, which we will touch on in a moment, what did he tell you? What did he show you on Monday night?
He's a winner, and he's a leader, and he's the real deal at quarterback. So Urban Meyer has the luxury of, he's got 3 great starters. Now, he also has a fantastic running back, who, by the way, is a redshirt sophomore, and proves that not only is he a great off-tackle runner, which Urban Meyer loves to run in that offense, he grinds it out in between the tackles. He was a monster.
Runner. Isn't he like the 3rd string on the depth chart too? Where did I read that? That they're loaded besides him at running back for the future.
Oh yeah, they have the 2016 number 1 back committed last week. Well,
yeah, I mean, but Tambor, did you see Elliott going off for 200 yards?
I thought if he was going to have a big game. Did I think 240 yards? No. And I mean, listen, he obviously put up 220-plus yards against Alabama, so it's not unfeasible. But I guess to Abdul's point, none of this is Marcus Mariota's fault as much as it was Oregon's fault. Oregon was +3 in the turnover column, and in reality, +4 because Mariota's pick was really in garbage time. You're telling me that you forced 4 turnovers, and you get, 3 points out of it? That's your football game right there. And they got outmanned in the trenches. Their defensive line was gassed by the second half, and their offensive line got mauled. I mean, it just got flat out mauled all game long.
I'm telling you, Ohio State, you got to give credit to Urban Meyer. I mean, yeah, we're Canes fans. We don't like him from his days at Florida, but at the end of the day, he coached a heck of a game, and no one deserves it more than he does. I'll tell you that. Spence, here's the question I have for you. Cardale Jones, as we discussed, decided to stay in school. Now, one could argue that his draft stock may never be higher But at the same time, you could also argue he only played in 3 games. Granted, he went 3-0 against Wisconsin, Bama, and the Ducks. But was this the right move? Did he realize, okay, maybe I need to come back and gain a little bit more experience?
I think it was the mature decision to stay because, like you said, he's only had three games of experience. I mean, he's still really young. He's a redshirt sophomore, a redshirt junior. I don't know, whatever he is.
He's still got a lot of years. He's got at least 2 years left of eligibility. Exactly.
Yeah, and it shows like a lot. Like he clearly cares about the program because most people in his position, after, like you said, coming off a 3-game stretch where he beat some of the best teams in the country, putting up great stats, and like you're blowing them out. You have all the scouts raving about you. Most players would come out. He stayed in. That's pretty special, I think.
No, you definitely got to give credit to a kid who, I mean, let's be real. He's not going to go to class, so he's not doing it for the education. He already said that in his tweet a few months back. But Abdul, we have a real quarterback battle coming up in spring ball between, assuming JT Barrett stays, which he's indicating he probably will. If I'm Braxton Miller, I'm looking to transfer. Abdul, you're Urban Meyer right now. You have a great problem on your hands. What's going to end up being the ultimate deciding factor come September?
I mean, I think if there's any coach that has experience with this, it's Meyer. I mean, remember that Florida team when it was Chris Leak leading it and Tebow came in?
That's true. Leak was a good quarterback. That's right.
Spell quarterback. But both, I think Braxton Miller's definitely gone. He's transferring. That's a lock. But the difference here is that Barrett and Cardell are both passers first. So I don't think you really want to run a dual system with those 2 QBs. Now, I think that this really should be an open competition. People forget J.D. Barrett played excellently before he broke his leg. I think this Ohio State team would have still got to the championship game with J.T. Barrett running it. So I think, honestly, is Cardale the more physically impressive specimen? Absolutely.
It's like Roethlisberger out there.
It really is. But I think at the end of the day, the competition between these two is only going to make whoever wins it better.
No, you're absolutely right. That's true.
This should be. I think Cardale's made the right choice. I feel like if he does win out, he's going to get pushed by JT. And remember, JT's actually a year younger than Cardale. So even if he loses one more year, he's only a redshirt sophomore next year. He'll still have 2 years of eligibility left. So he'll have his time as well. So I think it's a good move for both of them, actually.
Tambor, question for you. I'm looking ahead. I always try to look ahead, even though it's probably way too early to even start talking about the college football season next year. Obviously, Ohio State's got a lot of talent coming back. You think they can repeat, or are there other teams on your radar that you're excited about next year?
In a playoff, I think in the playoff era, it's going to be incredibly difficult. And with any team that wins, I'm sure we'll get to basketball in a second. We're seeing the San Antonio Spurs in the NBA this year getting everybody's best shot. My very early pick for next year is TCU, the team that actually got left out.
Absolutely.
I think Garrett Patterson's a fabulous coach. He's always been a fabulous coach, and usually a defensive first guy, although this year was one of his worst statistical defensive years. And he's got a quarterback, and he's got an offensive system which lights up the scoreboard. So I think they're going to get the defense together. I think Trevon Boykin has turned into a fabulous passer, considering that he's a guy who at one point was playing wide receiver and they didn't know what to do with him. And I think they finally found a home for him. I think TCU will be in the thick of it all year, and I think they have a chance to really go out and win a national title.
Let's just hope that the Big 12 gets their act together and maybe decides to create a conference championship game. That would have certainly helped both them and Baylor. Definitely agree with you on TCU there. Baylor, talking about Baylor, they return a lot of talent as well. Definitely think you'll see the Big 12 maybe even challenging the SEC. Who knows? That's the big debate as always. Does Jim Harbaugh make the Michigan Wolverines relevant in year one?
No.
Why not?
No.
They don't have the talent.
No.
You don't think so?
No, you can't.
Exactly. No.
You can't turn dirt into like a diamond. I'll keep it PG. But he has no talent on that team.
Do you think in 3 years, Michigan, Ohio State will be the best football we will ever watch in terms of the rivalry? Does the 10-year war come back to life?
No. I think because the main problem here is that the level of Michigan talent, of Michigan high school talent, football-wise, hasn't really been there in the past 5 years. I think people forget that Stanford was in probably the richest high school football state in the country. You have California kids, 3-star California kids are the equivalent of 4-star Midwest kids. I think that, and people forget.
Hate on the Midwest over here, damn. We're killing our Midwest viewers.
And also the Big Ten as well is very strong. Like you have Michigan State, that's a great program right now. Northwestern, they can get it together. Whiskey beat Auburn. Like I don't think that I think Michigan really have their work cut out for them.
All I can say is
I think 3 years is just enough time.
Yeah.
I think that's just enough time. And by the way, he's a guy who has enough national recognition. The guy is Jim Harbaugh. He won at Stanford. He's won in the NFL. He's demonstrated that he's successful in doing what he does, and he's a great guy who develops talent. This was it was much more localized. This was like in 1979, Howard Schnellenberger came and sat down on your couch. He left his pipe there, and he came back.
That was a brilliant recruiting tool, by the way. Brilliant.
It was the best recruiting tool I've ever seen. I think Jim Harbaugh carries that type of persona that is going to gravitate people and kids to want to play for him. And he's also a guy he's a very smart guy, too, for that matter. So he will definitely preach any discipline and any order that was certainly been lacking under both Rich Rod and Brady Hoke in the last,
Well, you definitely got that right. The Michigan football program has been an absolute mess. Maybe even more so than our Miami Hurricanes. One thing I want to talk about before we move on to the NBA segment. Just the other day it was announced that Miami Board of Trustee Bob Mann has donated $1 million. And let's hope that goes to good use in the football program. But I must say, before we transition to the NBA, Al Golden is really, really skating on thin ice. I can tell you that right now. We're talking NBA in just a second.
We making noise,
We leave the gridiron and take our talents to the hard court. I feel like every day, Spencer, there is another trade being announced in the NBA. I mean, we have Jeff Green to Memphis for Tayshaun Prince. We have Quincy Pondexter going to New Orleans. Jameer Nelson, and Nate Robinson on the trading block again. I mean, there are trades going on every day. Can you break it down for us?
First of all, I think Jeff Green is the most average player in the NBA.
Uh-oh. Here we go.
Yep.
Here comes the rant.
He is slightly taller than average. He is about average weight. He is shooting slightly below average from the field. He's shooting below average from three, slightly above average from the free throw line. He is a slightly above average defender, a below average rebounder, and he always looks like he's just kind of like lost. He never looks like he's actually in tune with the game. That said, I do like the trade for Memphis because look at who they gave away. Tayshaun Prince and then second-round picks, I think?
Protected first.
All right, yeah, but it's going to...
Which, probably end up
late
being
first.
late first.
Isn't it late first or 2 seconds? Something like
It's one or the other. I like the move for Boston. That's another topic for another time. But you think, does it impact Memphis immediately? Does that make them even more of a threat in the West?
Yep, because Memphis is one of the top 3 defensive teams for the last, 6-7 years, like going back to Lionel Hollins, but they've always had problem on offense. Now they have Mike Conley showing why he's the most underappreciated point guard in the NBA, who is a star playing from the outside. Then you have Gasol on the inside running the offense, Zach Randolph. You finally have a go-to perimeter guy, and Jeff Green. It should help him. Even if it's just like a little bit, if you can get the extra 3 or 4 points, that's something.
No, I mean, it's definitely something to look forward to if you're a Memphis Grizzlies fan. If you're a Celtic fan, though, I like how Danny Ainge is sort of saying, you know what, we're going to rebuild through the draft. They have a ton of first-round picks coming up along with some
11
early
picks
seconds.
over the next 4 years.
That's
11 first-round picks.
That has to get you excited if you're a Celtics fan. Guys, Jameer Nelson, Nate Robinson, does it even matter? I mean, are they even impact players anymore?
Nelson's going to a contending team. He can still play.
I mean,
I feel bad for him.
Is he a factor?
As a backup point guard?
You think so?
Who else would you rather have coming off the bench? Shoots the ball pretty well from 3. Doesn't really turn the ball over that much. He's small, but he's a mighty mouse.
I always thought he was.
Jameer Nelson's always been mighty mouse.
Yep.
He's going to be on a playoff contending team, and he's going to do exactly what Spencer said. He's going to come off the bench. He's going to bring a little bit of energy. He's a guy who can help stretch the floor and shoot that three-point game. And if you need a veteran presence who, like he said, is not going to turn the ball over, I love Jameer Nelson on any playoff contending team. I don't know that he'll move right away. I know he's been dangled, and I know there's been a lot of talk, but he will definitely be moved again before the trade deadline, and he will definitely be competing come, late spring, early summertime for a championship.
Now, I must say, when I think about Nate Robinson, I can only think about the time he got that written arrest for the public urination incident in White Plains, New York. But, Abdul, if you're an NBA team right now getting a veteran, Nate Robinson, is that something that you should be excited about, or is it more of just, all right, we got to move bits and pieces and we'll figure it out later kind of thing?
I think it really depends on the makeup of that team. I think he's probably going to get bought out by Boston. And I think that, for example, like you see, like when he was on the Bulls, he really provided a spark to that team when he was on that team when Rose was there. I feel that's also the locker room, and him having vets in that locker room that can keep that sort of sporadic spree shooting that he falls accustomed to sometimes under control. Now, there are rumors that that the Cavs are the number one, the team that's most interested in him. I think that them, with the volume shooting that they have, if they pick him up, that could be an absolute disaster from the outside shooting in terms of efficiency. I think that they already have. J.R. Smith took 19 shots.
So glad he's up the Knicks now. His first game back as a Cavalier was comical.
It's an absolute circus.
Yeah, you got that right. And with LeBron,
so I think I don't know. I don't know what's going to be happening. I think leading into them. I know people say that LeBron, has done this before with Spoelstra, sort of, taking advantage of his coach. But Blatt is in no man's land right now. He is a dead man walking.
Now, all right, I guess we'll transition to that. We'll get to the Austin Spence. I want to hear your thoughts on Austin Rivers in a second, but let's talk about David Blatt, because if you remember, this was a few weeks back when the Knicks played the Cavaliers. Blatt called a crucial timeout, which I agree with the move, but Kyrie Irving clearly did not agree with him. I don't know if you remember, it was in the fourth quarter. Kyrie thought he had the break, and Blatt called a timeout, and there was clearly a disagreement over what the play was going to be and whatnot. All the players are saying that they're on the same page with him. I don't buy it. Spence, is it just like what Abdul said? Could it be possibly an Eric Spoelstra 2.0 where they're just getting used to each other? Or is Abdul right? Also in the sense where, this guy just not meant out for the NBA.
So I think he's 100% meant for the NBA. If you look at his success that he's had, whether it was in Israel or leading Russia to the bronze, he's had success at every single level. There's no reason why he can't have success in the NBA. I do think the players don't really respect him.
LeBron pushed them, right? They got physical.
Yeah, but at the same time, you look at it, and it looked like he was trying to argue with the ref, and LeBron was just trying to push him to the side. I understand sometimes the coach needs to take a tech to set the emotion of the game and to understand the refs that you really want something called.
That's the John Feld move. Coach Feld, if you're listening, this is a shout out to you. That's the John Feld, our varsity basketball coach, used to get teed up to get fired up.
One last thing, though. It's completely different from the Spoelstra incident, just because back in Miami, Spoelstra had Pat Riley backing him 100%, and you also had Dwayne Wade backing him, because Wade loved him back from when they won the first championship, and he was the player development coach. So here, who do you have backing Blatt besides the GM, he was the interim GM last year, now he's in his first year, and I think it's just very different.
I think one thing that people are overlooking a tiny bit too is the fact that if it's true that Tyronn Lue is, sort of superseding what Blatt does, and that the players look to him, you can't have a divided coaching staff. Mm-hmm. That is ridiculous. Having completely separate, pretty much two separate coaching staffs at once. It's screaming a disaster. I think what Spencer was saying, Blatt's shown that he can win at every level. I just think that this was a forced marriage with Blatt already being hired before LeBron came, and a situation in which you have a whirlwind of an ego like LeBron coming in, and, it's a no-win situation for Blatt, pretty much.
And at the end of the day, it's the Kings team, and you have to let him make the call, in my opinion.
So, if I'm the...
Shame on LeBron. I'm coming out here and saying shame on LeBron, shame on Kyrie Irving, shame on all of these guys, as Charles Barkley would say, the silly knucklehead. You know what? Your job as a basketball player is to go out and play. Now, look, I understand not everybody likes their manager. You can treat a boss, you can treat your coach as a manager at this point. Your job is to go out and execute, and if you have constructive feedback, you give it back. Look, these guys are professionals. They get paid a ton of money, and at the end of the day, you know they want nothing more to win. If, in fact, it's all true that these guys are basically throwing hissy fits and trying to get him fired, there's rumors today that they're trying to get him axed, that's completely unacceptable. And I think management's got to step in because at the end of the day, what ends up hurting is the bottom line, and then they can't get players, and then Cleveland gets all angry, and it's another disappointing situation. This is a sad, sad story, and to me, this is a black mark on LeBron's career. Regardless of wherever they wind up in the playoffs, in the finals, wherever they are, if they don't make the playoffs. At this point, I'm rooting against them to make the playoffs after this. I'm incredibly disappointed that the spokesperson of the NBA, LeBron James, is either letting Kyrie Irving cause such an incident or that he himself is having a tantrum and being a diva.
I'd like to add two things. One, Jeff Van Gundy, if you are listening, and if he gets fired, this is your job.
Oh, that would be great.
Yep. Two, I do blame David Blatt a little bit just because first of all, he can't control his team, which I understand you need to balance the egos, and that's on the players as much as the coach. But he's also not giving them the ball in their spots. Like Kevin Love, for example, last year, Kevin Love lived in the mid-range, lived in the post last year. Now he's averaging, 7 threes a game, and he's got 4 touches from the elbow instead of 11, which is what he was getting last year. So Blatt's Princeton offense, which I think is phenomenal, isn't really...
Georgetown.
Yep, it's not really suited for the Cavs.
No, it's definitely a good point. I like the offense, too. You got to run it with the right personnel, and I don't necessarily think that's the case. Real quick, before we move to college hoops, Tambor, you are real passionate about Rick Bucher's most overrated players. Real quick, give me a handful of overrated NBA players that come to mind.
Yeah, so first of all, I'm almost enraged that Rick Bucher and he has completely declined. I don't know that I could pick 5 guys right off my head.
Give me one guy. Give me one guy who you think is just overrated. It's garbage.
So one guy I agree with in Rick Bucher's list is I 100% agree with Lance Stevenson being overrated. Mm-hmm. He has completely dropped off since he left the Pacers, and I think part of what made him great and what really drove his tenacity in watching the Pacers against the Heat a couple times is he played on a tenaciously defensive team. I don't think the Hornets had that, and I think he got paid big money to go do that. The other guy who he's not overrated, but I guess he's underfed, and we can discuss this in another segment or another show. Please, Clippers fans, if you're listening, tell them to give DeAndre Jordan the ball.
Yeah. Wait, give him the ball?
Give him the ball.
Give him the ball where? He has stone hands and he can only finish at the rim.
Yeah, to do what? He needs to do what? He has no game outside of lobs and pick and roll finishes. What can you do? Please work on him because they are so desperately underutilizing. And not desperately, they are so dearly underutilizing the potential that both of those guys could have in the post.
Well, let me tell you one thing. The alarms are sounding off in the background. I don't know what the heck you guys are doing over there, but I think that's a sign that we got to talk a little college hoops, and more importantly, the Miami Hurricanes. I must say, I'm biased, but being a Canes fan, the other night was just an unbelievable game to watch. I mean, in Cameron Indoor Stadium, Coach K is getting all this recognition, which he obviously deserves. He's closing in on 1,000 wins. But wow, was it sweet. It was sweet to see them win handedly in Cameron Indoor. I mean, I think we all watched that game. Angel Rodriguez put the team on his back. Sheldon McClellan continues to be the most freak athlete out there. Manu Lecomte decided that he was going to step it up. He hadn't been playing that great the past few days, and he went off, had 19, I believe. They did a great job on Okafor. As a Knicks fan, I was a little concerned, quite frankly, because I want to see him succeed, obviously, because he will be a future Knick. But it was great to see Omar Sherman, the freshman from Duncanville, Texas, go to work along with Tanya Jakiri. Guys, like I said, I think we all watched. What's the biggest takeaway from that game for you guys?
Jahlil Okafor needs to slow down in the post.
I think like a thing that people forget about this win, not to take anything away from Miami, which shows a little bit about Duke. Duke a couple of years ago really changed the way they recruited. I mean, they're starting 3 freshmen this year. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Tyus Jones and Justin Winslow played absolutely terribly. I mean, Okafor didn't play great either, but I think that's what comes with playing freshmen. They're going to have games where they stink it up and they do not play well because that just comes with experience. Now, I think that honestly, like Miami, this team has a lot of upside. Angel Rodriguez played excellently, and I think that if they get a little bit of momentum like this, and they're big from play, as we saw because as you said they were able to keep Okafor under control. This team has upside.
There's no question. Inconsistency has been a factor. People have discussed this in the past. Tambor, you've been watching this team for the past few weeks. Tanya Jakiri against Boston College at a double-double, contained Okafor. Most of the game, for the most part, didn't have a Okafor-like dominant performance. Is Tanya Jakiri really the X factor going forward, do you think?
No. And look, you know Tanya, I know Tanya, indirectly. I mean, I think the one area of this game which, I get a little worried about is at times his defense really gets softer than, the 3-fly Charmin that I've got sitting in my house. And soft defense in the ACC. That's just an unacceptable tactic. Now, look, I really loved how Omar Sherman played. And I think if you could have a guy like that in the low block, somebody who, I don't know to say that he would be as dominant as Julian Gamble was in his last season, but Gamble...
He reminds me of Gamble, though. You're right. He really does remind me of Julian Gamble.
Does.
There's no question about it.
Man, but remember on that tournament run, and you were there firsthand, Jules was the guy who made it happen on defense. He was swatting shots. He was aggressive on the boards. I would really love to see Omar Sherman play that role on his team, and I actually think he's the guy who's the X factor on defense, not Tanya Jakiri.
No, that's definitely a good point. And Abdul, I also thought you brought up a good point in terms of the sort of evolution of Duke basketball, right? I mean, they were always the 4-year guys, stayed all 4 years, they were veterans. But, the one and done is becoming more apparent at Duke. And I think you're absolutely right. I think that has shown, given that they've lost now 2 in a row, and it doesn't get any easier for them because, like I discussed, we're going to want to just highlight a few games here that look intriguing. Number 4, Duke, they're still 4th in the country, obviously. They head to Louisville to take on the 6th-ranked Cardinals. That is by no means an easy game. And if they lose 3 in a row, you may want to start hitting the panic button. That may be a little dramatic, but definitely doesn't look good. Other games that come to mind, West Virginia, 16, goes to the road against Texas. They're 20th in the nation. Another great Big 12 matchup. Oklahoma State at Oklahoma, keeping it in-state in the rivalry there. And Spencer, your Utah Utes, the 8th team in the nation, they take on Arizona. That's a great game. Yep. Is your boy, what's his name?
Jacob Puelto.
Jacob Puelto. Can he hang with the big dogs of Arizona, you think?
Yep, I think he's going to cause huge problems. Not sure what his stats are going to be, but he's a very good interior defender who can guard the perimeter very well for someone 7 feet tall who is 19 years old.
There's no doubt that he's got a ton of upside. And my last highlighted game here, the Rock Chalk Jayhawks, the number 9 Jayhawks, go on the road to Iowa State. That, I think, is definitely going to be an entertaining one for sure. Guys, any teams that impress you? I mean, obviously there's hundreds and hundreds of Division I basketball teams. Tambor, being a Jersey guy, I know you've always rooted for the Hall. Do you think the Hall can get in?
They're back. They're finally back. I can't.
The Hall, man.
That's the Hall back. actually played basketball again. Look, Seton Hall had some quality wins. It did have a loss to Xavier, which did hurt them, although Xavier, to be fair, a good basketball team, and they were playing things up. Now, I haven't watched as much Seton Hall as I've watched St. John's this year. I do also love St. John's being a local team. Sir Dominic Porter, my favorite name in all of college basketball, but I really talented college basketball now. So my local team, Seton Hall and St. John's, my teams to watch.
I think the Big East needs to get a little bit more respect, even after this post-conference switching. I think they'll get more teams in than you think. Providence, as we saw in person against the Canes in Brooklyn, they definitely look promising, and obviously the Villanova Wildcats. Definitely, as the NFL season winds down, we'll be paying a little bit more attention to college hoops, but we just wanted to give our Miami Hurricanes a quick shout-out. They go on the road to Notre Dame, the 12th-ranked Fighting Irish, and Pat Connaughton, who is going to play professional baseball for the Baltimore Orioles, but turned down a lot of money to stay in college. So you got to love the fact that he just loves the game, and they're going to be at home. So it's going to be a tough matchup for the Canes. But if they can get the W in South Bend, watch out, because they're going to be right in the conversation with all the other big giants of the ACC.
We making noise, we them boys.
All right, keeping up to the tradition of the Pregame Sports Podcast, we're going to continue our sports personalities segment that we did last week. We got some really good ones. We're going to start it off with Abdul here. He is going to represent Mr. David Blatt. So, Coach Blatt, take it away.
All right, I've got a game tonight at 10:30 Eastern against Los Angeles, and I think that if I lose tonight, I will see. And I know that is a stretch because the Lakers are terrible, but if I lose tonight, I'm going to have some serious problems with regards to my job security. I think that I am honestly dealing with a circus here in terms of my star player is completely running riot with regards to his open disrespect of me. And I think that at the end of the day here, I'm kind of fighting a losing battle here, because what am I supposed to do if I have players openly fighting back against me, brushing off my calls, openly arguing with me? There's nothing really I can win here, and management will come out and keep them under control. And I think that honestly here, it's also a bit on my fault because of me not adapting my offense, which I don't know why I'm not doing that, because I've done it before. And I think here at the end of the day, I think I might have to go on a Craigslist and look for some new jobs in the next couple of weeks.
Coach, you're getting physical with LeBron on the sidelines. I mean, that can't be good. Kyrie's always giving you the cold shoulder. The body language doesn't look good there. You're in for a busy few weeks, that's for sure. Now, one of the impersonations I'm really looking forward to, Spence, you're going to take it next here. Mr. Josh Smith, who everyone has been hating on since he left Detroit. So, Spence, what is Josh Smith thinking about right now?
I'm thinking about how I can make a team even better while I am not on that team anymore. I go from playing Detroit with a crowded front court, not really doing anything well because I just simply can't hit jump shots. And I go to a team that needs a guy who can hit jump shots because you have Dwight Howard in the post. And Houston goes from a team that's, what were they, third? I think we were third in the NBA before it came, and now we're 7-5 in our last 12. So even though it's still above 500, I'm causing a huge drop-off. Then you have Detroit Pistons, my former team. I think they've been 7-2 in their last 9 games.
They love you not there anymore, bro.
Oh,
they hated you over there.
But now they love me.
Well, now they do love you.
Yep.
Maybe that's a good way of thinking about it. That's a good attitude to have, Josh.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't think I should be starting because I'm Josh Smith. But if Kevin McHale were actually a good coach, he'd keep me on the bench and he'd restrict me to 10 minutes a game.
You only want to play 10 minutes a game? You think that's the best for your team?
No, I think that's best for the team. Modi Yunus is a lot better than me.
Well, Josh, I certainly wish you the best of luck, and I'll take the next round here, and then we'll have the mayor close it up. But I want to give a shout out, and I'm going to represent a guy we talked about just a few minutes ago, starting point guard of the Miami Hurricanes basketball team, Angel Rodriguez. I came over from Puerto Rico when I was 15 years old, and I played high school ball in Miami. Earned a Division I scholarship to play for Frank Martin, who was a local Miami guy at the time. And I took my talents to Manhattan, Kansas, and I killed it over there in the Big 12. But quite frankly, I wanted to be a little bit closer to home. I wanted to be, where I really was from, and that's Miami, Florida. And I saw what Coach L did with Shane Larkin, and I saw a significant opportunity. And man, it's been paying off. Granted, I had to sit out a year. But when you look at me this year, I've been criticized for losses against Eastern Kentucky. But at the end of the day, look what I did against Florida. Look what I did against Illinois. And look what I did this week at Cameron Indoor Stadium. Coach Krzyzewski said that was one of the best performances he's ever seen from an opposing player at Cameron Indoor Stadium. I feel blessed, as I always shout out at the end of my interviews on ESPN. I'm blessed. Coach K has seen some talent come through that gym. He's almost at 1,000 wins. So coming from him, that means a lot. I have a huge opportunity this weekend to take on the Fighting Irish in Notre Dame. And boy, let me tell you, I love the big moment. And I will be ready. And now, finally, Mr. Mayor, you have a surprise for us. Take it away.
Yeah, well, my first big board's up. I love the big board. Me and my friend Todd McShay going all night. Iced coffee, hot coffee, iced coffee, hot coffee. I don't think Marcus Meyer ever slips one day. I think he goes top 10. Good arm mechanics, sometimes 4'6", 220 frame. I love him. Oh, hold on. Call from Todd McShay. I have to disagree with you. Jameis Winston not going to be a winner. Makes too many turnovers. Loves scratching. Has some kleptocracy, kleptomaniac issues at times. Don't think he's going to be the number one overall pick. I will tell you what, though, for all you New York Giants fans, I love Brandon Sharp and Eric Flowers from the University of Miami, Florida. Used to go down there, these great parties, great interviews. Giants, take a puff at the tackle.
Mel Kiper, how do you keep your hair up like that?
I use so much Joe Man. It's because of all that ice coffee. Ice coffee, no burn, no spill. Even if you spill a little bit, kind of leaves a nice stain and pattern. I go ice coffee, but a little bit of Joe.
Well, Mel Kiper, I will continue to enjoy your coverage in the NFL Draft. And I must say, Tambor, like you did last week with our boy John Gruden, you really do have quite a talent. I think you are the next coming of Caliendo, that's for damn sure. We want to thank all of our viewers.
And tell you guys all that Spider threw wife and Anna Nikki to play against the.
Oh, that's true. That's your favorite play, Coach. We want to thank our viewers. We're getting a lot of love on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. We really appreciate it. We're trying to continue the momentum here. We got a great sports weekend ahead of us. The podcast here, the pregame podcast, we like the Seahawks. We like the Colts to meet. We could be wrong, but we've been pretty solid on our picks thus far. And we're excited about the future of the Miami Hurricanes, both basketball and football. We definitely think that Mariota is still probably going to be the number one pick. And, of course, we still root for the most pathetic team in the NBA, the New York Knicks. But, needless to say, we have some good games coming up. Guys, thank you so much again. I'm really excited about the progress we've made so far. And, folks, join us again next week. We'll be giving you a brief Super Bowl update. We'll talk more NBA. Hopefully, there are some brighter days ahead for the Knicks, but who knows. But anyway, guys, thanks for joining us. Viewers, thank you again. Make sure you like us on Twitter, Facebook, and, of course, watch us on YouTube. Thanks again, and enjoy the sports weekend.